especially Muslims in this country, today they are clearly seeing that they have been reduced to second-class citizens. Today, what we are seeing in this country is a far more insidious form of emergency who are just opposing the government. For example, 3 days ago, 5 people in UP were arrested. Judiciary today are more serious, far bigger than they have ever been before since the founding of our republic. Yesterday, FIRs were registered against people, against Muslims who were offering namaz at a new mall that has been made, and he has been arrested, multiple FIRs, multiple arrests in different states, etc. The mainstream media, particularly the electronic media, has been reduced to becoming just cheerleaders out on the streets in the name of either cow slaughter, in the name of love jihad, who can just go and beat up anybody that they want. For the first time, the pricing details were removed from the audit report. No law in the last 5 years has been referred to any parliamentary committee. In order to understand the challenges faced by the judiciary, we first need to understand what is the role given to the judiciary by our constitution. The Constitution created a democracy with and gave fundamental rights to citizens in order to effectuate that democracy. And it also established certain institutions like the Election Commission, Comptroller and Auditor General, Public Service Commission, various institutions, and the judiciary, in order to ensure that democracy will function properly, in order to ensure that fundamental rights of citizens will be respected, in order to ensure that all institutions created by the Constitution perform their duty assigned to it by the Constitution. Because every power given to any institution, whether it is to the executive, to the police, or whether it is to the election commission, or whether it is to the comptroller and auditor general, every power is coupled with a duty. And every institution has a duty to exercise that power given to it when the need arises. And the most important institution created by the Constitution is the Indian judiciary, the higher judiciary, the high courts and the Supreme Court in particular. And the duty assigned to the higher judiciary is not merely to deliver justice, to dispense justice in ordinary disputes which come to the courts. That is of course a very important function of the judiciary. But the other important function which sometimes we do not remember is the duty to protect the fundamental rights of citizens, the duty to protect democracy, and the duty to ensure that all institutions perform the duty which has been given to them by the Constitution. Now today, what we see in the country, and that is why I feel that the challenges before the Indian judiciary today are more serious, far bigger than they have ever been before since the founding of our republic, is because today we see a spectre in the country where fundamental rights, even without declaring an emergency, you see in 1975 an emergency was declared, fundamental rights were suspended officially. Supreme Court also said that habeas corpus is also not maintainable, nobody can challenge their illegal detention. Press censorship was imposed. But the assault on fundamental rights, on democratic institutions, on democracy itself is far more serious than it was during the declared emergency of 1975. And I say this because, on the one hand, you see, during the emergency, two things happened. mainly. One was that people were being arrested, people who were perceived to be opposed, politically opposed to the government were arrested and put in jail. And the second thing was that press censorship was imposed. Today, even though there is no declared emergency, we are seeing the spectre of people who are just opposing the government. For example, 3 days ago, 5 people in UP were arrested for putting up posters saying that there is a lot of inflation, price rise, gas prices, petrol prices, rupees falling, etc. and they were put in prison. Yesterday, FIRs were registered against people, against Muslims who were offering namaz at a new mall that has been made in Lucknow. Muhammad Zubair, who runs a fact-checking website and who exposes falsehood being uttered by anybody, whether it is by the ruling party or the opposition party or anybody. He has been arrested for calling out hate mongers who are purveying hatred in society, communal hatred in society, for saying that this person is purveying hatred. Why isn't action being taken against him? He has been arrested, multiple FIRs, multiple arrests in different states, etc. And worst, what we are seeing is that the Supreme Court in a few cases recently, like in this Zakia Jafri case of Gujarat, or more recently, day before yesterday, in that Chhattisgarh killings case, has not only dismissed those petitions, but has virtually ordered that the petitioners be put in jail. 5 lakhs penalty has been imposed, petitioners have been put in jail, etc. So what we are seeing is an all-round assault on the liberty of citizens. Firstly, of course, minority community. We are saying minority, especially Muslims in this country. Today, they are clearly seeing that they have been reduced to second-class citizens. Mobs can be let loose upon them on the streets. People can abuse them in television studios, abuse them on the social media, etc. and there is no action against those abusers or the hate mongers, etc. And anybody who dissents, anybody who questions the government runs the risk of being put in jail by charges of sedition, sometimes charges under UAP, etc. being slapped upon them. So therefore, it's not a matter of how many people have been put in jail. During the emergency, about 1 lakh people had been arrested. Today, maybe 5,000 people have been arrested or 10,000 people have been arrested. But anybody who is seen as seriously opposing the government or questioning the government runs the risk today of being arrested, facing multiple charges in multiple states, etc., running from pillar to post, trying to get bail and rotting in jail for years on end without any trial. So the situation of civil liberties is no better than what it was during the emergency. So far as press censorship is concerned, even though there is no formal press censorship, informally what we are seeing is that journalists are being jailed for saying some things which are unpalatable to the government. What we are seeing is that the mainstream media, particularly the electronic media, has been reduced to becoming just cheerleaders and purveyors of propaganda of the government. So the large section of the mainstream media has collapsed. Its independence has collapsed, and the independence has collapsed due to a variety of techniques employed. One is that you give government advertisements only to those people or those media which follow what you want to say, which become instruments of your propaganda. Second is, if they don't fall in line, even then you use the enforcement agencies, enforcement directorate, income tax department, CBI, etc. in order to bring them to heel. And sometimes even packets are being sent to these anchors and editors, etc. of these newspapers, direct packets. But more serious than that is the virtual collapse of the rule of law and the collapse of all institutions. There are mobs out on the streets in the name of either cow slaughter, in the name of love jihad, who can just go and beat up anybody that they want, and the police remains a helpless bystander, helpless or sometimes complicit bystander. And we are seeing this in many, many states, almost across the board. So, we are seeing a situation where people who speak against the government run the risk of being just abused and trolled on the social media. Abuses, threats of rape, murder, etc. are being meted out to them. I spoke about the media, that the media as an institution, its independence has collapsed to a very large extent. Of course, there is still that internet media or social media which is standing up. But by and large, the mainstream media's independence has collapsed. It is not doing the job which it is supposed to do. But look at other institutions. Look at the Election Commission. Ever since Mr. Session became the Election Commissioner, the Election Commission was supposed to be a citadel of independence. But in the last 6-7 years, what we are seeing is that the Election Commission is only going after, for example, when there are violations of the Model Code of Conduct. Election Commission pursues only the opposition, does not pursue senior members of the ruling party for violating codes of conduct. Dates of elections are being announced by the Election Commission at the instance of the government. Sometimes the government or the ruling party announces the dates of the elections even before the Election Commission officially makes the announcement of dates according to their convenience. We have seen the Comptroller and Auditor General was one of the most independent institutions in India, which used to do audit of all government departments and government funds, etc. In the last 7 years, audits of central government departments and central government institutions has been reduced by 75% by the CAG. For the first time since the CAG was formed, a defense audit did not have pricing details. Whenever the CAG does a defense audit of any defense deal, pricing details are always given in that audit. In the Rafale deal, for the first time, the pricing details were removed from the audit report, and this fact that pricing details would be removed from the audit report was known to the government even before the report was prepared, because the government stated this in a sealed cover to the Supreme Court even before the report was prepared, that in this audit the pricing details have been taken out. Police has become, you see, there was an important judgment given by the Supreme Court in Prakash Singh's case for police reform, which was in line with the judgment on the CBI in Vineet Narayan's case, which was to essentially make the police independent of the government, of the political government. But today we are seeing that why just the police? The CBI, the Enforcement Directorate, not so much the CBI but the Enforcement Directorate, the NIA, the Narcotics Control Bureau, they are just acting as instrumentalities of the political establishment in order to pursue whoever they feel should be pursued according to their political interests, and those who join the ruling party, they are not pursued. And we are seeing this across the board. Almost every investigating agency has been reduced to an instrumentality of the government, despite several decisions of the Supreme Court about what needs to be done in order to make the police independent. So, we are seeing an assault on institutions, on our democracy across the board. See, elections, in order to, firstly, we did not make what we call participatory democracy, we created a representative democracy. But even in that representative democracy, the parliamentary committees were an important instrument for giving some participation to the people in lawmaking. Laws which were placed before Parliament were referred to parliamentary committees, where people would be invited, all the stakeholders would be invited to give their views on those laws. Today the system of parliamentary committees has been virtually done away with. Virtually no law in the last 5 years has been referred to any parliamentary committee. Laws are being passed in Parliament in 2 minutes. 50 laws passed in 5 minutes without any discussion, without anybody knowing which laws have been passed. 50 laws are being passed as finance bills, which means that law will not even go for voting to the Rajya Sabha. The ordinary constitution provides that every law has to be passed by both houses of parliament. But here what we are seeing is that Rajya Sabha is being bypassed altogether and laws are being passed through money bills. Therefore, it is in this situation of our democracy, at this juncture of our country, that we have to see the role of the judiciary. Because the role of the judiciary is not merely to administer the law and decide disputes. It is also as much to preserve democracy, to preserve fundamental rights, and to ensure that other institutions perform their duty according to the law.